Well, we're at the end. This is the conclusion of Tell Me What You Want. So that includes control and the afterward. Now, in this case, the control, it's a young man, a late 30s individual, and his wife is experiencing a terminal illness, and not to disclose too much because obviously I want you to read this, right? I encourage you to read this. I've learned something through this about myself and some parallels. And again, I don't respect all of these people, but that's the reason why they're in therapy. And this is why we need to talk to each other. We need to have um, healthier relationships in order to prosper. You know, um, when we don't have those things, then the conflicts arise out of miscommunications and the baker's dirty dozen, which is my modification, including empathy of the dirty dozen, which is a human factors. It's their psychological principles upon which a chain of command, sorry, not a chain of command, a chain of events leads to an incident, an accident, a death, an equipment failure, and so on. And control is a fallacy, right? It's an abstract concept that takes the place of consent and personal power because we have to agree uh, to give control up to someone else or to take control, take initiative of a certain task or reasoning of purpose. And I'm wearing my staff cadet shirt in this instance for symbology and thinking about the scenarios that I encountered as an air cadet that that taught me something because this may echo with a lot of you in that you can learn a lot on the drill square and just on the drill square that it gets used everywhere else. I imagine it's the same kind of experience going through basic as it was in my cadet career because the familiarity. I've slept on military bases here in Canada. um, I've been around veterans since a very young age. um, and I still feel connection even though I have my issues and my grievances with these experiences. And this is where okay, so the life of pi came up in my Facebook scrolling through the recommendations, and at the end, life is a process of letting go. um, but there's just some things that you shouldn't let go of, right? You shouldn't let go of love. You shouldn't let go of caring. And let's see. There's a point at which these things become power struggles and means of exploitation and anger and resentment. Let's see, where is she? George and Penelope. Nostalgia is like a drug. The feeling that it was always better before in a different era. And I'm not nostalgic about my time as a teenager, but I was setting myself up for success, even if I wasn't the very best. I was trying to do everything I could and struggling because, I've been struggling with anxiety and depression since I was a child. It's just I'm not the only one that goes through these things. Um, you know, trying this is the experience of growing up in that you're trying to control your character, the constitution of your character, and what you believe and what your motivations are. In military terms, what's your task and purpose? You know, pass the butter. Oh fuck. That's when the comedy comes into play. So this is at the beginning of control. We all have control issues throughout our lives, whether it's about food, drugs, money, our bodies, rules, other people, how we are viewed, our relationships with time. There's always something we wish we could control or control better. In the oral stage, they learn that thinking, and so babies form attachments to the oddest objects. In the oral stage, they learn about things by taking them in. Literally, they'll put anything in their mouths, no matter how absurd, dangerous, or illogical. Don't you put it in your mouth. Don't you put it in your mouth. If you don't know what it is, if you don't know what it is. This is true throughout life. Toddlers, children, adolescents, and adults all want control in different ways. Though we regress and act infantile occasionally, we spend our lives trying not to be helpless as a baby. How much longer? Are we there yet? Etc., etc. When I think about control and power, I think about people that power trip and have such arrogance, you know. I was a cocky young man. I was. I was all sure of myself, and I had a point to prove that I was worth more than what other people thought of me as as a guy gen, and that I didn't know how to come back from that in a lot of ways, and again, all the rejections and this Chinese water torture of social expectations and so on and so forth, and then just not being true to the knowledge of self in that you know I was trained to be a leader. I don't know if I was actually a good one. I really don't. And you know, I wanted to be a fighter pilot when I was very young. That was my life dream, was to be an F-18 fighter pilot in the Canadian Forces. That's what I set up my life for. And then when these things didn't happen, that's when the anger started. And it comes out in your actions, in rebellious ways, and the treatment of other people, especially, at which you don't control because their desires are in conflict with yours, and there's nothing you can do about it. Someone's more popular or someone's more charismatic. Um, these are just social dynamics that happen within every organization. They're just amplified and magnified within the military. You know, again, I only speak from my experience within cadets and in civilian life. So maybe these sentiments echo with you, who, if you are in the service or otherwise, you know, and being, the means of control that happen, the manipulation, in which some people try to motivate other people by those levers of manipulation, either by promoting your rival or giving them an award, or marking down your performance and so on and so forth, not being completely honest, they're not getting the resources that you need when you require them, all the tit for tat, grudge matches and so on and so forth, the holding of a tabulation of all your errors and everything that you've ever done wrong, that for which you'll be judged by on every test and every qualification and so on and so forth. Or say if you're a man, you have a bit of a comedy, a comedic aspect, you're more interested in trying to uh, get people to relax a little bit, not take themselves so seriously. How that can be held against you for not being a serious military person. Um, you're going against the grain no matter what, and you just can't seem to fall in line. No matter the consequence, it wouldn't matter anyways. And then you end up in the misfit crew. Um, what can I say? We can't always conform to the expectations and the need for control that some people have, and that's just part of life, and the again. So I'll touch on these things in which, when in 2004, when I left and I aged out, right? I'll keep saying this because this was important to me. It was an important moment in my life, and I remember when we were living on Gardenvale, and I'm sitting in the recliner, and I'm looking at this package, this D&D form to fill out to go back and be a CI, as for summertime, and then, well, if I'm a CI, then I'm in the CIC, and I'm an officer. I am a legitimate officer, and even though at the time people didn't view within the Reg Force or the reserves that the CIC is not regular military, and in all reality, they're a special force, right? They deal with youth, and they're specialized in that regard, giving that training like a task force, right? A different mentality, a different unitary philosophy than everybody else, and the concentration is upon training and development. Now, um, one of my, I had some privileges, um, and I'll cite the moments in which I felt that, including when I was in command of the recruit flight, and I had, I don't know if any of you have to deal with youth, but there probably is someone out there that's going to watch this and has, and with youth leadership or any kind of young people's sports, that it's like herding cats at some points, and to get 100 young people at 12 or 13 years old to do the same thing at the same time is a real accomplishment. But it takes an agreement in order for that to happen. They're there for the reason that you're there, that they want order, and they want discipline, and they want respect, and they want reward from these actions, and they want to be recognized and appreciated, because they're not getting that somewhere else in their life. And if you want control, you have to have power, and you can't have one without the other. You can't have any of these things, any of these desires, without relationships. It's people that make up the body, right? The corpse, the esprit de corps, the spirit of the body is people. And if there's a rotten apple amongst the bunch, that spoils it for everybody else, but discipline happens for a reason, is so that everybody understands that lives are on the line at a certain point. And in my time, it's post 9/11. Hey Zoe, are you gonna join us? And in Canada, you can join the reserves or the Reg Force at 17 years old. So there was some people within the squadron, including myself, that were gung ho about enlisting or joining up, and well, they went to the reserves and they were doing double duty in cadets and in at Wolseley and in the reserve unit. So they had a lot on their plates. All three things: high school, reserves, cadets, and that's a lot of responsibility for a young person. And you don't really understand how much weight that is until you're in it. And other people make fun of you, other people talk behind your back for it, but they're the ones that lose later in life because you set yourself up for success, even if it didn't feel like success at the time. But again, that package to become an officer, and I wrote a letter up, and I wrote letters up for all of my officers, expressing my discontent and my treatments and of their decisions, because I had nothing to lose at that point, right? I'm leaving. What does it matter? Hopefully, by my example, something would change, and I hope things have changed because it's been years since I've been anywhere near these programs or anywhere near a military base, you know, um, because of the disenfranchisement, the disillusionment, um, the distrust, and the disgust, because of the way things were going, and the trends, watching things happen, and because of my own failures, because I just couldn't live up to the image of myself that I had in my mind. Right, the desire was no longer there. And then when I went to college all those years later, and I met one of my CIs, my civilian instructors, and she worked. I don't know if she still does, and she worked at Fanshawe College in the registrar, and she kept recommending these post-exit military courses for me, and I was just like, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't feel appreciated. I don't feel like I want to deal with this certain group of people, um, because of my beliefs, and I feel like I would be persecuted and be singled out for these things. And quite frankly, that's kind of how it went. Because if you're vocal about something, especially within the ranks, it can be held against you because you're not going with the status quo. You're not popular. But the thing is that the people that aren't popular usually end up being the innovators, and you usually end up being the leaders on the battlefield of life. And that's the exception proves the rule. The person it's But again, this diminutive, micromanaging, idiotic style of leadership, right? Um, where it's not just delegate and disappear. It's more like, okay, I'm going to tell you how to do exactly your job until you do it right, and then I'm gonna make sure that you do it down to the second, uh, every single day of our lives, together. That's where the torture comes from, and frankly, that's I can't stand for that. You know, or say cultural issues are introduced and poison the military doctrine and the chain of command. What's the phrase? Is that military intelligence is an oxymoron? That holds true. Because violence is the last resort, but some people just rise to the position of their incompetence, and their pride blinds them to the realities of the situation, and their desires, to say to win medals or to win commendations, to be the poster child, the it person, the most popular person, is counterproductive, right? Is whether you're in the officer corps or you're an NCO or you're in the lower ranks, we're all in this together. It's all a team effort, and even veterans, still fight for you on the outside. Even people like me are trying to do something for you. You know, we might not always know what we're doing, and we might not always be helping, but at least the effort and the care is there. At least the love and the appreciation is there. because we all have our struggles. And like I was saying with the depression and the anxiety, is that, some days are just a Sisyphean task that no matter what you do, you can't seem to roll yourself out of bed and do something about it. It's just not there, you know, and that's really discouraging. But you have to be kind to yourself, because everybody has their battles, and you can't control how that happens the further that you go through life, because you're not under the expectations of other people. You're only living up to your own expectations. And belonging is another part. The control over self leads to belonging. Like all of these things in this book overlap each other, and this is where the control over the message to the world at large, through the media, through the propaganda, in order to maintain a power base, or to eliminate threats, or to eliminate dissent, or to whatever whatever agenda or agenda politic is being employed or deployed, right? It doesn't mean it's going to be forever. Nothing lasts forever. And the control over time, my time is worth more than yours. But when it comes down to it, none of us have time for that. Sooner or later, we got to face that music. Everybody's got a date with the end. And there's very little that we can do to control that, except accepting fate, and accepting the things that we do have a semblance of the concept, or we have a little bit of influence over our personal decisions and personal discipline. It's not always wise to enforce control through the end of a barrel. And we shouldn't seek revenge, because in a misguided attempt at revenge, or at control over our own end, some people want that. Some people want to commit suicide, so they, because they don't have control over their own lives or their own bodies, and they just can't go through the pain anymore. But let me tell you, if you're in that position, I wish that on no one. But since I come from Catholic schools and Christian upbringing, I don't agree with it. I really don't. Even in those days that I wish I was dead. Suicide is cancer. It spreads the grief to everyone else, and it removes the opportunity to do something better, and to seek connection. Even if you're on the park bench, homeless and helplessly hoping for something better. If you're in the throes of drug addiction, there's help out there for all of us. There's always hope for all of us. And it doesn't, at a certain point, it doesn't matter if you have family or not. You just have to keep on fighting. You have to be your own best advocate. And the only way that you're ever going to be your own best advocate is to seek knowledge. And there's always the library. The library, these spaces which society sustains and lives and breathes by. Education, government, the military, public services. These things that hold back the fray of annihilation that we all have to contribute to at some point. We all have to participate. And I know and I understand that participation is painful because it means getting over such grief, shame, and pride. So in the end, tell me what you want. And I'll tell you what I can do about it.